Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be reviewing post-tropical storm Ida, which is currently moving over parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. From parts of Pennsylvania on northward, we have the threat of flooding, and from southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey on southward is where we have the threat of severe storms and even tornadoes in a couple of these systems. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be breaking down this two-part system and how much rainfall you should be expecting. If you have any questions or you want a personal forecast, leave a comment down below. We're also going to be quickly reviewing what's happening over the Atlantic. So we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Larry, Tropical Depression Kate. We're also going to be talking about Invest 91L. So we have a couple other systems that are out in the Atlantic, which we're also going to be covering. And then, of course, later on in the video, we're going to be timing out this storm. So we're going to be looking at the Futurecast Radar and taking a look at when and where these rain bands will be setting up. Let's start off with the current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some air quality alerts in effect for parts of the west. We also have some flood watches for the southwest, and then we have a few more flood watches up for parts of the northeast right within this area. In that yellow area is where we have a tornado watch currently in effect, and those are actually two separate tornado watches. We're going to be looking at those in just a few moments. We then have some flash flood warnings over central and southern Pennsylvania, where we're dealing with the bulk of the rainfall right now. Heat advisories into parts of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Some of that is not even because of how warm it is, but it's also because of how many of these people don't have power down here right now. So we don't have any air conditioning within those areas. So even if it is, let's say, 85 or 90 degrees, usually that isn't heat advisory worthy. But in this case, it definitely would be, because you don't have, even most of these businesses don't have air conditioning. So it's not like you can even go into a store, just kind of hang out there to cool off. There's really nowhere where with air conditioning, and especially for the next week or two, these areas are going to be without power and air conditioning. So it is that's one of the reasons why we have that heat advisory up for that area. Yesterday we had a high temperature in Stovepipe Wells, California of 112 degrees, so a little bit colder than what's normal for the high temperature. The low temperature was at 22 degrees Fahrenheit in Sand Creek Station, Oregon, and the highest rainfall report was 6.26 inches in Columbus Air Force Base in northeastern Mississippi. Let's take a look at the current National Hurricane Center page. You can see that we have Invest 91L. That's down into the southwestern Caribbean and into the southern Gulf of Mexico. We'll be reviewing that in just a little bit. We then have Tropical Storm Larry and Tropical Depression Kate, both out in the middle of the Atlantic. Tropical Depression Kate expected to curve out like this. Larry is expected to become a Category 3 or stronger, but we're still watching on whether this will head into the Caribbean or whether this will maybe just move out to the northeast and then eventually curve out to sea. So we do have a couple options with this. And then we of course have post-tropical or extratropical storm Ida, which right now the center is somewhere between West Virginia and Western Virginia. Let's take a look at Invest 91L. You can see it's a blob of scattered thunderstorms into the central and southern Caribbean. You can see in the top left-hand corner where what the forecasted track of this, or the forecasted development zone, is from the National Hurricane Center, located at 13.3 degrees north by 81.1 degrees west, maximum winds of 35 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,008 millibars, and we currently don't know how fast this storm is moving. Taking a look at Tropical Depression Kate, this is the one that's out in the north-central Atlantic, just to the east of Bermuda, located at 26.8 degrees north by 52.3 degrees west, maximum winds 35 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,007 millibars, moving north-northwest at about 12 miles per hour. Very, very weak system by this point. And here's the Bermuda, and here's the track. So you can see that this track is going to be well to the east of Bermuda, and even if it were to move over Bermuda, it's a very weak system by this point, so we wouldn't see any impacts either way. This is just going into the middle of the Atlantic with no real on-land impacts. Tropical Storm Larry, this is the one that you want to pay attention to. It looks like a hurricane already, and I'm assuming by the next update, which would come around 5 p.m. Eastern time, I think they would probably push this up to Category 1 strength just based on the satellite. We don't have any reports from inside the storm, of course, but just looking at the satellite imagery, it looks like it's a hurricane. You can already see the defined eye right there. We already have winds up to 50 miles per hour, and you can see how well developed this system is, and it still has a ton of more development that's expected. So you can see they're expecting this to say is a tropical storm. Now that is again up to debate. We still don't know whether that'll actually be true, and or whether it'll maybe develop a little bit faster. Then it goes to major hurricane status as it starts to curve northeast of the Caribbean islands, and this could become a Category 4 storm, even dare I say a Category 5 storm. Luckily, good news is that this should not be impacting land. The one area that you might want to be concerned for is Bermuda, because that is somewhat in the track of this. If you were to kind of push that out a little bit further out, but again, there's still a lot of time for this to curve off to the east, and that looks like probably what's going to happen. So it looks like it'll be a Category 3 or a Category 4 storm, but luckily it looks like it'll be missing most of the land masses. Located at 12.3 degrees north by 27.6 degrees west, maximum winds 50 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1001 millibars, moving very fast west at 22 miles per hour. Here is the remnants of Ida. You can see cloud cover over much of the northeast, where we're dealing with some severe weather right now, and mainly in the form of flooding. But something that is interesting is how you can tell the different types of weather activity that we're seeing just based on the clouds. So you can see that we are dealing with some rainfall in this area that's actually rather heavy and steady, and that's because we see that blank kind of canvas of white all over that area, indicating cloud cover and rainfall activity. But you can also see where the convective core of this is, and that's down here. So this is where we're dealing with most of the convective activity. One of the reasons is because you're getting a little bit of sunshine. We were not expecting to see sunshine over these areas. So basically from central New Jersey on downward to Virginia, we're dealing with now the cloud cover getting exposed a little bit, and that's not good news, because that means that between now and about 6 p.m. Eastern time, when most of the storms should start to fire up even more, that time frame is going to have open sunshine. So these areas are going to be warming up into the 80s, getting higher amounts of CAPE and convective available potential energy, and that is going to help these storms develop a little bit more than what we were originally anticipating. So while you might not be dealing with as much sustained flooding like you are in Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, New York, and into southern New England, you will still be dealing with probably one of the more intense bands of rainfall, and also the threat of tornadoes, which right now we're seeing that especially for parts of northern Virginia, DC, and Maryland, where we have a few tornado warnings up. And of course, if you were to extrapolate that to the east, you would expect some tornado warnings probably going up into Delaware, maybe southeastern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey within the next few hours as those storms roll on to the east. Located at 38.3 degrees north by 80.2 west, maximum winds 30 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,000 millibars, moving quite quickly east-northeast at 25 miles per hour. Here's the current rainfall, and you can see, or the current radar, and you can see that we have that very heavy rainfall, which has not moved this entire day pretty much, into central and eastern Pennsylvania. By the way, this imagery is from AccuWeather.com, so I just like to use their satellite their radar imagery, because it looks the best out of all the radar sites that I've seen. So if you want to go check their website out, you can just go to the radar tab, and the radar tool is actually quite useful. Then you can see that down here is where it starts to get a lot more convective, and this is where we're dealing with the tornado warnings, the severe thunderstorm warnings, not necessarily sustained flooding, but mostly in the form of either tornadoes or damaging winds from these strong severe storms. If we look at the two active tornado watches, now I put this together around 2 p.m. Eastern time. So right now it's 2:12 p.m. Eastern time as of when I'm recording this right now. So this is when these tornado watches are active for, and that's when all of this information is valid for. But again, you're going to have to check the local National Weather Service page, even if you're watching this right as it's being released, because there probably will be some changes since this is an immediate type of situation. We have our first tornado watch, which will start off with the one that's in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. You can see that a few tornadoes are likely according to them. With both of these, hail is not likely, although the one that's down into the mid-Atlantic, that's a little bit higher risk of hail, but in both situations we're not expecting too much in the way of hail. And winds, we could be seeing scattered gusts up to 75 miles per hour. And then if we look at the top of the screen, that shows you the hazards. You can see they have a high risk of tornadoes, and then by the way, this is valid for until 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the one in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the one in Virginia, even a little bit of North Carolina into Maryland and D.C. as well. That one is valid until 7 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. You can see on the top there, we have a high risk of tornadoes, EF2 plus tornadoes, a moderate risk. This is an area that is not used to tornadoes at all. You see a few per year in these states, but again, it's not very likely, especially in these coastal states. You usually don't see too many tornadoes. Severe winds are at a high risk, 65 knot plus winds, which is around, I want to say 70 or 75 miles per hour, very, very high. You're looking at a moderate risk of that. Severe hail, very low. 2-inch plus hail, very low. So hail is not likely in this area. And then if we look at the second one, which is the one right here on the right-hand side of your screen, tornadoes, moderate risk, EF2 plus tornadoes, a low risk. Severe wind, moderate risk, 65 knot plus wind, low risk. And then very low risk of hail for those areas. But we do have the potential of some hail, up to small marble size according to them. And then a few tornadoes also likely. Scattered gusts up to 70 miles per hour within this area. Both of them are under a population of about 12.5 million people. So in total, we're looking at somewhere around 25 million people under both of these tornado watches combined. So a fairly good amount of people under these tornado watches. If we look at the chances of severe weather according to the Storm Prediction Center, we're under an enhanced risk for parts of a little bit of Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, southeastern Pennsylvania, central and southern New Jersey. And if we look at the chances of tornadoes, you can see that's mostly up into central and southern New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, D.C., even a little bit of northern Virginia as well. That's where we have a 10% risk of tornadoes. Here's the Cape values, and you can see they're going to be the highest up into New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland mainly, even into a little bit of areas around Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So that's where we're looking at 1 to about 2,500 joules per kilogram in Cape. So that's the amount of energy in the atmosphere. You want to see that above 1,000 to get some severe storms, and especially for this area, knowing that you already have that temperature difference, which will create a little bit more convective activity, you don't need as much Cape. So we're looking at, even if it's just 1,000 or 2,000, that is definitely enough to spark up a fairly big tornado or severe weather outbreak within these areas. If we look at the maximum temperatures, you can see the big cutoff. So we're looking at 80 degrees below this line. Above this line, you're into the 70s or even into some of the hilly areas of northwest New Jersey, into central and northern Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. So these areas, you're into the 60s. So you have this tiny little zone where you're in the 70s, and then you go into the 80s further south and east of there, or you go up into the 60s and even some higher elevations looking at the 50s as you get to the northeast of there. And that's the high temperatures for today. So you're looking at low temperatures, probably even lower than that in a few of these spots. So that daytime heating from the cloud cover being removed in these areas is going to be a big deal, and that is going to cause a lot of issues with the severe weather. If we did not see that opening in the clouds, most of the severe weather will not be happening. So that little opening, that little bit of sunshine is helping to warm up the atmosphere within these areas. That's what's going to lead to some of the severe weather. If we look at the dew points, these are just super high within this entire area, 70-degree dew points plus, which you only really need dew points above 65. So we're above 70 in this entire area, and now we're looking at a little bit of 75 plus within this area right here. So you're looking at a fairly big area that's at least above 70-degree dew points, and even a few spots that are getting up near 75-degree dew points in Delaware, Maryland, and southern New Jersey. So that's going to be an issue, especially with the severe weather. This is really going to help fuel these storms. Let's take a look at the Futurecast Radar, and this would be as of 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. You can see most of the yellow and orange colors signifying the heavier bands of rainfall. You can see that in through parts of Maryland, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Connecticut, and also into Massachusetts. The green colors, that's where you're looking at lighter or moderate rainfall, but it's really in those yellow, orange, and red shades where you want to be a little bit more concerned. Now, for those of you who live right along the coast, you're actually in a little bit of a lull in terms of the rainfall. You're not dealing with too much. It might still be cloudy outside, but you're not really dealing with rainfall. But within another couple of hours, this is all going to fill in, and it's all going to continue to move further to the east. And for those of you who are not dealing with any rainfall right now within this area, it might not be steady rainfall that fills in. It might be more the sporadic heavy downpours for 5 minutes, then it clears out for a little bit, and then you see maybe another heavy downpour for another 5 or 10 minutes. So it's going to be that type of event if you live within basically this area from central New Jersey on southward down here. If you live north of there, it's going to be more of a steady rainfall that starts to fill in. Moving this on to about 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you live, again, within that zone that has the possibility of severe weather, which would be right in here, the main time is going to be between 3 and 9 p.m. So 3 p.m. if you live in the westernmost extent of this, let's say in western and central Maryland, and then 9 p.m. if you live in maybe the easternmost extent, so coastal New Jersey. So that's going to be the time frame, and then you can kind of fill in. So let's say Philadelphia, probably right around 6 p.m., 7 p.m. is when you're dealing with most of the severe weather, and then you get further east of there, and you can extrapolate that. So we're looking at most of this happening between 3 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight in terms of the severe weather. You can see the heavy pockets of rainfall, and that's indicating the severe storms. You might have a little bit of hail in this, especially over the southern parts of this severe weather area. And once you get one or two of these storms to separate off from each other, that's when you could be dealing with a tornado threat, because you get a little bit of separation within the storms, and that can create the possibility of seeing a few tornadoes within this area. If you live in southern or central New England into upstate New York, northern Pennsylvania, you guys are looking good in terms of the severe weather threat. We're not expecting severe weather, but we are expecting quite a bit of rainfall. In a lot of these areas, you're looking at 2 to 4 inches. You look into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, upstate New York, and you're looking at probably closer to 6 inches in a few of those spots, especially as you get inland of the coast. If we move this on, you can see those strong storms developing right within this area here. And then northwest of there, you're dealing with steady and heavy rainfall that might not be convective. You might not be dealing with thunder and lightning, but you're dealing with definitely a steady rainfall, and that's not good news because these areas have been seeing rainfall since last night. So around midnight is when most of this rainfall started in many of these areas, and it's been continuing all throughout the day, according to the radar. So this is going to continue on. Luckily, by tomorrow, most of this should be out into New England, so those areas in Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia can finally get a break from all that rainfall. If we move this on, you can see that by midnight tonight, we have potentially a little bit more severe weather on the back end. We're going to have to see what happens here. Each model has its own different solution, but now you're dealing with mostly heavy and even torrential at times rainfall into parts of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, even into parts of Vermont and New Hampshire as well, even into some parts of coastal Maine. Now you're looking at rainfall basically going from New York City itself on the outskirts of the rain all the way to Eastport, Maine, and even into areas like Nova Scotia and Canada. So New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, Canada are both getting into the rainfall by this point. That would be 3 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Atlantic Time. So you can see that some of that rainfall now starting to fill in for those spots in New England. Pretty much the entirety of eastern New England from New Hampshire on east is dealing with rainfall by this point, and especially as you get south and east of those big mountain ranges in New Hampshire and some of the mountains in central Maine. Once you get east and south of there, you're dealing with quite heavy rainfall. So areas like Bangor and also into Portland now starting to get into some of that rainfall, so some of the big metro areas in Maine. And then moving this on, you can start to see that it's mainly all within the state of Maine where we're dealing with light or moderate rainfall, especially in eastern Maine, and that's going to continue to file out. This would be by 12 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. If you look at the total rainfall forecast from this model, and you can see that we're dealing with anywhere in the yellow 1 to 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches in that red, 3+ inches in the brown, so that's 3 to 4 inches, then 4 to 6 inches in this color right here, and then within this pink color, which you see a little stripe of, goes right here. That's where we're looking at 6 to 10 or more inches of rainfall. So this is the zone that you have the potential for flooding. Once you get above 3 inches of rainfall, especially depending on how quickly that 3 inches plus of rainfall falls, is gonna probably be the zone for flash flooding. And then you can see the convective activity that will all add on to some of the rainfall, and this is added on to what you've already seen. So we're using the HRRR model, which is a extremely good model for the close range. So within 18 hours, you want to start using this model, and I definitely do because it's very useful. But this is not adding on to what already happened in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, and anywhere else that was already experiencing rainfall. So this is all brand new rainfall. So you're looking at maybe another 4, 5, 6 inches of rainfall depending on your location. If we look at the chances of flash flooding, you can see that we have a 50% or higher risk anywhere from eastern Connecticut all the way down through West Virginia and the panhandle of Maryland. So basically from West Virginia on through Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and into Connecticut, even a little bit of Rhode Island, we have that 50% high risk. And even if you live in this red area, you still want to pay attention because 20 to 50% chance of flash flooding, a moderate risk, is not put up too often within these areas from the Weather Prediction Center. So you want to pay attention to this even if you're not in these thunderstorms. They could bring maybe just 1 or 2 inches when you look at that map of the total rainfall, but it's also important to see when that 1 or 2 inches falls. It could fall, within the span of an hour, and that would cause, of course, flooding, or you could see 6, 7 inches of rainfall fall within the span of 36 hours, and that wouldn't cause as much flooding. So it's all dependent on how quickly all that rain falls. If you're wondering about the wind speeds, here's the maximum winds that are expected through this event in wind gusts. And you can see we're looking at about 35+ miles per hour within that yellow shade, and then once you get into the oranges, this is where you're looking at 40 to 50 miles per hour or higher. And of course we could see isolated areas that get a little bit higher than that, especially within some of these thunderstorm bands. Once you get basically from Massachusetts northward, for those of you who live in central New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, you're probably dealing with less than tropical storm force winds. But once you get into that yellow shade, those are tropical storm force or higher wind gusts. So not necessarily sustained winds, but you could see maybe a breeze or two that gusts up near 40 or 50 miles per hour depending on your location. Also, this is not related to the flooding in the Northeast, but NOAA went in and actually did some satellite imagery. So they brought in some of their drones and flew over some of the areas. So here's just an example of some of the damage that happened from Ida. You can see this is Crown Point, Louisiana, which is in southeastern Louisiana. It's outside of the levee system, and it had a ton of flooding. And you could see this on their website. You just have to go to NOAA's website, and that's on their front page, and you can go see. It's an interactive map, and I just took a screenshot of it and put it in here. But you can see all the flooding and damage that happened from this. You can see down trees over pretty much this entire area. And again, these are the areas outside of the levee system, barely above sea level. So when you get, a foot of rainfall, that is going to really impact these areas, adding on to the storm surge. So our prayers are with the people who live down there, that hopefully they are getting some help and are getting recovered from this storm. But yeah, definitely not a good situation down there. So and that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. If you have any questions or you want to leave a comment, just leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll respond to pretty much all of your questions and comments. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.